ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम सदाशिवसमारंभां शंकराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ओम. In the last two sessions, we had looked at the two examples given in the sixth chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad in the subchapters 8 and 9, 6.8 and 6.9, in the context of the Tattvamasi Upadesha from Uddalaka Aruni to his son. And the reason why we were discussing this was the Purva Pakshi, the author of the Nyayamrita, Sri Vyasatirtha, had alleged that the reading of the mantra is not Tattvamasi but Atatvamasi. You are not that. And the reason he had argued was that none of the examples are compatible with the reading Tattvamasi, because all the examples are based on difference, they convey difference, and if the examples are conveying difference, it cannot be alleged that the reading is Tattvamasi which conveys identity, because it would be incompatible with such a reading, and therefore the Padacheda should be Atattvamasi. This we had seen. In 6.8, the example was of the Shakuni and the Sutram, the hawk and the string, and we had looked at the Nyayamritakara's objections to this and the refutations by the Advaita Siddhikara. In 6.9, we had looked at the nectar from different trees joining or combining to become the honey, and we had looked at the objections from the Nyayamritakara and its responses from the Siddhikara. Now we will look at the example that occurs in the 10th Khanda of the 6th Adhyaya. Here, the teacher in the Upanishad uses the example of the various rivers merging into the ocean. He says in Mantra 1, Ima Somya Nadyah Purastat Pratyah Syandante Paschat Praticyastaha Samudrat Samudrameva Apiyanti Sa Samudra Eva Bhavati Ta Yatha Tatrana Viduhu Iyam Ahamasmi Iyam Ahamasmiti एवमेव खलु सौम्य इमाः सर्वाः प्रजाः सत आगम्य न विदुः सत आगच्छामहे इति इह व्याघ्रो वा सिंहो वा वृको वा वराहो वा कीटो वा पतंगो वा दंशो वा मशको वा यद्यद्भवन्ति तदा भवन्ति स य एषोऽणिमैतदात्म्यमिदं सर्वं तत्सत्यं स आत्मा तत्त्वमसि श्वेतकेतो इति भूय एव मा भगवान् विज्ञापयुत्कृति तथा सौम्येति होवाच. So in these three mantras, like the previous section, the example is of the rivers merging into the ocean, and once they have merged into the ocean, it is impossible to differentiate between the water of one river and the other river. Now this is quite similar to the nectar and the honey example, and therefore the Nyayamritakara also combines these two examples and says Tritiye ima somya nadya ityadina uktayor nadi samudrayoshchaikyam vaktum nahi shakyam. So here he is saying that it is not possible to claim that there is the identity between the rivers and the ocean, and he gives the same arguments that he gave with respect to the previous example. It is not as if these rivers were identical before they merged. It is not as though they have given up their differences and then they merged into the ocean. Nor is it the case that the differences before were illusory and they later were proven false. And he says, like the threads that join to make the cloth, the various rivers which are independent, they join to create a new thing called the ocean. He says, when you are talking about the merging of the river into the ocean, are we saying that the river gives up all its various parts, its individual parts, and then becomes completely one with the ocean? Or are you saying that the river along with the parts get merged? Or are you saying that it creates a completely new thing called the ocean? Which of these three things are you talking about? Now, he gives an example. He says if you have two sacks of pulses and you mix those two sacks of pulses, essentially the pulse there's an individual grain of pulse which contains all its individual parts. So all the avayava of the pulse grain is present, even when the two sackfuls of grains are added together. So are you saying that when the river gets added to the ocean, the river still retains its individual parts, or are you saying that those parts go away? And he gives the example like how if you are mixing water with milk, the water and the milk become completely one. So there is no way you can separate the water from the milk afterwards. So are you saying that there is no individual separation once the river gets combined with the ocean? Or are you saying that the river joins with the ocean and becomes something else? Is it like a different thing altogether? Which of these three options is the case? He's arguing. In either of the first two cases where the parts have been retained or the parts have not been retained, you cannot say that something which was completely different is possible to become identical afterwards. So the merger cannot create identity of something which is actually different. If you go to the third alternative that something new is created, then it follows that the river and the combined ocean are different entities anyway. So that being the case, whichever alternative you look at, what this example conveys is difference and not identity. It cannot convey identity. This is the argument of the Nyayamritakara. Now the Siddhikara uses the same argument. He says the purpose of this example, just like in the previous case, is to simply say that when the differentiating factors are absent, differences are not perceived. So, just like the case of the pot in the room, the space within the pot and this space within the room are considered to be different, but when the pot is removed, you realize that there is no such thing called a pot space. It was always the room space, and there is no fundamental difference between the space that is confined within the pot and the room. So that's what they say. He gives the same example there, and then he goes on to say, in the case of the ocean, if you look at what the Upanishad says, it says, "Taha samudrat samudrameva apiyanti sa samudra eva bhavati." So essentially, they came from the ocean. The rivers were formed from the ocean, and they joined with the ocean itself. They came from the ocean because the water from the ocean evaporated, and then it condensed and then precipitated as rain. That rain essentially gathered into rivers, and then the rivers finally joined into the ocean. So what came from the ocean went back into the ocean itself. So essentially, that is like saying the gold became the ornament. So what was the gold before? When it became the ornament, it is still gold only. There is no fundamental difference in the nature of that substance as gold. So similarly, when the Upanishad says sa samudra eva bhavati, what it is saying is that even when it was the river form, fundamentally it is actually water only. And when it joined to the ocean, it is fundamentally water. So there is no substantial difference between the river water and the ocean water. Yes, the river water is not salty, the ocean water is salty, but that is not a property of the water, it's a property of the silt that is present in the case of the ocean. It is not a fundamental property of the water itself. The quantity of water which is there in the ocean never diminishes. Even when the water evaporates from the ocean, becomes clouds, then rains, and then becomes river water. When the water is lost from the ocean, it is not as if that the ocean dries up or the water reduces. Similarly, when the water is added back into the ocean, it is not as if the quantity of the water increases. It is ever full. So there is no major change to the ocean. It remains as the ocean itself. Now, there is an apparent difference as evaporated steam, condensed water, river, etc. But fundamentally, there is no change itself. There is nothing that you can add or remove from the ocean. There's nothing that you can add or remove from its fundamental nature as water. So it is not the case that the rivers attain a particular attribute called riverness, naditvam, and this ocean attains samudratvam, It has an attribute called Samudratvam. The river water has an attribute called Naditvam. So we are not saying that the Naditvam becomes Samudratvam or the Samudratvam becomes Naditvam. We are not saying that. Essentially, what we are saying is that there's a different name and a form to it, but fundamentally, as water, it is the same thing. We will look at one other example in the fourth time the Tattvamasi occurs, which is in the 11th Khanda. And we will read the mantra there. Asya somya mahato vrikshasya yo मूलेभ्यः जीवन स्रवेद यो मध्येभ्यः जीवन स्रवेद यो अग्रेभ्यः जीवन स्रवेद स एष जीवेन आत्मना अनुप्रभूतः पेपीयमानो मोदमानस्तिष्ठति. So this is the first mantra in the 11th khanda. And the second mantra is Asya yadekam shakam jivo jahati athasa shushyati द्वितीयां जहाति अथसा शुष्यति तृतीयां जहाति अथसा शुष्यति सर्वं जहाति सर्वशुष्यति एवमेव खलु सौम्य विद्धि इति होवाच जीवापेतं वाव किल इदं म्रियते न जीवो म्रियते इति स य एषो अणिमा एतदात्म इदं सर्वं तत्सत्यं स आत्मा तत्त्वमसि श्वेतकेतो इति भूय एव भगवान् विज्ञापयतु इति तथा सौम्येति होवाच. So in this example, the teacher Uddalaka Aruni shows the continuity of the jiva even when the physical body dies, that the jiva exists, that the atma exists, is what is being revealed in this section. And so he gives the example of a tree. And what he does is he asks his son, Uddalaka Aruni asks Shvetaketu to cut a small portion of the tree. So he shows a tree to him and he says, if you cut the tree at the root, you will notice that the sap from that root will flow. Now, if you cut the tree at the middle, the sap will flow. And if you cut the tree at the top, the sap will flow. So essentially what this is telling you, that wherever you cut, the sap is flowing in the tree. It means that there is this Atma that is pervading this entire tree. And when you are cutting a portion of the physical body of the tree, you are noticing the signs of life from that tree. In the second mantra, Uddalaka Aruni says, when the life in the tree is about to depart it, and if you notice the branches, when the life departs from any one particular branch, that branch dries up, shrivels and dies. When the second branch, if the life were to depart it, it shrivels up, dries. The third branch, when life departs it, it shrivels and dies. So what this section, this khanda is teaching is that the Atma or the consciousness principle pervades the entire body, and when consciousness departs from matter, it leaves the matter lifeless. So these are the two important lessons that Uddalaka Aruni is conveying to his son Shvetaketu. That consciousness is different from matter, it pervades the physical body, and it is because of consciousness that the physical body has the signs of life in it. The Purva Pakshi essentially interprets this mantra differently. He says the word Jiva in this mantra actually refers to Ishvara. And what this is talking about is that when Ishvara's blessing as the Antaryami is present in the physical body, the Jiva is alive, the being is alive. And when Jiva leaves the physical body, when the Antaryami leaves the physical body, the Jiva dies. And therefore, what this is referring to is the Ishvara Adhinatvam, or the dependence of the Jiva upon the Ishvara. So that is what is being revealed in this mantra. The words in the mantra, Jivena Atmana Anuprabhutaha Pepiyamano Modamanastishtati. The Purva Paksha philosopher, the Nyayamritakara, Sri Vyasatirtha, argues that the word Jiva in this mantra refers to Ishvara. And the reference to Pepiyamano Modamanastishtati refers to the samsari Jiva being dependent upon the Ishvara's blessing for him to have the benefit of enjoyment, etc. In other words, this mantra is revealing the Jiva's Ishvara Adhinatvam, or his dependence and subservience to Ishvara. When Ishvara's Anugraham, his presence is there in the physical body, the Jiva is able to live and enjoy. And when Ishvara's anugraham and presence leaves the body, then the body shrivels up and dies. And Jiva's enjoyership also ends at that point in time in that body. Now, the Siddhikara essentially says no. The purpose of this example is actually different. What this example is trying to say is that the death of the physical body does not lead to the jiva dying. So, when there are parts of the physical body that lose their functionality, like how the branches of the tree dry up, the rest of the tree is still alive. Similarly, if one particular functionality is lost, the jiva is still alive. And the jiva does not die when the physical body dies. That is what is being revealed here because there is a sentence in the section which essentially says, Jiva petam bhava kila idam mriyate na jivo mriyate iti. So the Upanishad itself is trying to teach us what is the purpose of this example. It is to reveal that when the physical body dies, the jiva continues to exist. And therefore, to say that the word jiva is referring to Ishvara is inappropriate. So this is not talking about jiva's Ishvara adhinatvam. It is referring to the jiva's transcendence over the physical body. And we cannot say that the Jiva Shabda refers to Ishvara because there is no reason to give up the Rudhyartham or the direct meaning that is well known of Jiva referring to the Jiva, not Ishvara. So there is no reason for us to give that up and to instead interpret that as Ishvara. Now, nor can it be argued that the Jiva is being referred to as the bearer of prana because he is the source of life that this mantra says. So, when the Jiva is present, the tree is alive, and when the Jiva is not present, the tree dies. So, Jiva is the bearer of prana. Now, therefore, Jiva, the word Jiva must mean Ishvara. Now, the Siddhikara says there is no requirement to restrict pranadharakatvam to only Ishvara because even the Jiva also is the bearer of prana. They are called living beings because they are the bearers of prana. There is prana within them. So you cannot say that Ishvara is the one who confers prana and Jiva does not have any prana in him. You cannot say that. And in the first mantra, essentially it says, Esha Jivena Atmana Anuprabhutaha Pepiyamano Modamanastishtati. So here, when we are talking about the tree essentially living, drinking water and being contented, etc., all this is referring to the bhoktritvam or the enjoyership of the jiva. That is what is being referred to here. That being the case, the word jiva cannot refer to Ishvara because we cannot say that Ishvara has bhoktritvam. Because kartritvam and bhoktritvam are said to be the superimposed properties of the jiva. They are not properties of Ishvara at all. So it cannot be argued that pranadharakatvam is an attribute that is uniquely present in Ishvara because the jiva also has this attribute. So thus, what this section referring to the tree and the life force that is present in the tree, it is not referring to the Ishvara adhinatvam of the jiva. Rather, what it is referring to is that the jiva or consciousness is independent of the material physical body. So that is the purpose of this example, and therefore one cannot argue for atatvamasi on the basis of Ishvara adhinatvam of this example that occurs in the 11th khanda of the Chandogya Upanishad. So with that we have looked at two examples. The first example in today's session was the river and the ocean, and the second example was the tree and the life force that pervades the tree. With the first example, the intended meaning was to say that the differentiation between rivers is only present or cognized when there is the differentiating factor present in each of them. And when that is resolved, when it merges with the ocean, no difference is cognized. Similarly, in the waking state, there are differentiating factors, and therefore jivas are distinguished depending on the body and the mind that they possess. But once the mind and the body is resolved in deep sleep, the jiva rests or abides in his higher nature as Sat. This was the same principle that was articulated in the previous section also. The new idea that is conveyed in this section is that even when the river is the river, it is actually the ocean only. Because it comes from the ocean, the basic water principle is still the same. And when it goes back into the ocean, the Nama Rupa is given up also. Similarly, even when the Jiva is considers himself to be a samsari and transmigrates in samsara, when he is facing the trials and tribulations of samsara, he still, in his higher nature, is Brahman, and that Brahman is unaffected by anything that happens. The creation of the universe or the dissolution of the universe does not affect Brahman in the least. Samudra is the ocean is just the ocean always. Even when there are rivers that come out from it, and even when rivers join it, nothing fundamentally changes in the ocean. Similarly, Brahman is Brahman, even when jivas emerge from it, the universe emerges from it. It is still Brahman as the universe, as the jiva, and when it resolves back into Brahman, it is Brahman anyway. So that was the new idea that was conveyed. And in the next section, Khanda 11, we spoke about how the Jiva is independent of the physical body. He survives the death of the physical body. He pervades the physical body. He is not the physical body. So that was the idea that was conveyed. The Nyayamritakara had interpreted these two different examples differently, but the Siddhikara had established that it is not a case that the Nadi Samudra Drishtanta is talking about Bheda between Nadi and Samudra. It is not the case that the tree example is conveying the Ishvara Adhinatva of the Jiva. That is not the case. So with that, we will conclude today's session and we will take up the rest of the discussion in the next session. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti